So I was thinking about this problem, and I think about it a lot. Of thinking of, what is this sort of thing called human capability or skill set? And at one end of the spectrum, I sort of navigate towards, man, everybody just sucks, right? Like everybody starts at the same spot. Nobody is any better off. Nobody is, that much better than the other person. And, if you sort of recognize that, then that sort of implies that everybody has the same capability. And then I waver and I think, there are some real talent that happens with just individuals. And that talent often plays out in different ways, right? So I think, okay, on the one side, if everybody sucks, then it's just a selection problem, really. It's just keeping people doing the same thing. But then, and the longer you sort of stay with that, the better off that you actually get. But then on the other side, you really do see, biological differences between individuals that are seemingly at the same sort of skill set or the same level. And, where you do see, so let me sort of preference that there is not likely to be massive differences between individuals at the same level, right? If you took two twins, there's not going to be that massive differences, but there are differences, and those differences can compound over time. So if you were to take these folks, right, and you were to one had just a little bit better of an advantage somehow, right? They were just a little bit faster. They're more inclined to like it. They're more inclined to keep going. They're more inclined to actually develop those skills. And, you might get advantages that sort of propagate that you couldn't necessarily get without that underlying skill set in terms of what that's going to do. Now, you know, how do I think this sort of plays out in life chances? That's a really big question. And there is a lot that goes on in terms of why somebody might be more successful in the long run compared to another. Um, and it's not just due to individual differences, but it's the exposure to a lot of different things. There's a lot of weird chance things that happen to people along the way that you cannot predict. And it's a really hard problem to suggest that, you know, individual differences sort of propagate to long lifetime advantages. Now, the only convincing evidence that I've seen is the delayed gratification research that there may be some underlying trait that allows people. So basically, this research shows that at a very young age, if you're able to sort of delay a little bit of pleasure, that 30 years, 40 years down the road, there's evidence, and they sort of track these individuals for a long time. There's evidence that they have better life outcomes in a number of different dimensions. Now, can we uniformly say it's because of this ability to delay gratification? Absolutely not, right? Like there is a lot that goes into it that matters, such as like, hey, these people probably came from better life circumstances. Probably they're in an environment, the sort of convincing case that that they're in an environment. This was done at Stanford. They're at a place that was really trustworthy. Uh, that somebody is going to show up you in another environment where it's not like that. It's not going to be the same thing, right? Like you don't trust people. If you grew up in a family that people were just not nice to you, you're not going to trust that many people. And it has nothing to do with the sort of biological sort of factor behind it, which is not really what delayed gratification research sort of suggests. It's not suggesting that there's biological factors. It just simply says you have this capability or this, skill set, then you can sort of withstand for a longer period. However you get it is a different story. Now, um, the this is where I waver, where I see that there clearly that some people have to work harder than others um, for the same thing to get the same outcome. And it's not just a little bit harder, it's a lot harder that somebody has to work to get the same outcomes. And, I might think about that. And I think about, like, hey, that is completely unfair, which it is, but it's also sort of a fact of life, right? And so that on one side, it actually makes a huge difference that there are, somebody has to work way harder, for example. Um, but at the same time, you have to realize that's just what you are given. And I think that's the challenging thing. That's where I recognize, or that's where I come back to, and I say, just everybody kind of sucks, right? So you might be given, a bad hand in 10 different things, and you have to work that much harder, or you're just not beautiful, or any number of different things, and it's so much more harder to sort of get up and get going. But you got to realize that we all suck in different ways, whatever that looks like. And when you realize that, hey, there is something that somebody else has that they deal with. Like, imagine this, right? So imagine you're extremely beautiful. You come from a wealthy family with lots of connections. Um, the pressure is then on the opposite side, where you have to, um, you know, sort of be. You have to sort of fit that footprint. You have to be good enough that that you know that you fit within the mold of what society is expecting to you. And society is, I mean, it's not this big amorphous thing, right? It's going to be your friends. That I think about this, right? Like, if you're extremely beautiful, like, just striking, it's hard for some people to walk up to you, right? So, it makes people nervous for various different reasons, right? So if that's the case, and then there's jealousy that other people feel of you because you have this sort of unbelievable beauty. Um, so then you're faced with kind of loneliness, right? Or you're faced with having people that might not be your true friends, or have the capability of being your true friends. And to think about that, like, how of a crazy, even though it's an advantage, it really is not necessarily an advantage, right? You have to learn how to process that and deal with that, and understand, you know, what should I do? How should I handle this? Um, so, long story short, I think that there are significant differences between people, um, and those differences matter because they compound. It doesn't matter in the immediate term so much, but over the long term, it compounds. But then on the same time, realize that we all have our things. We all suck in some sort of way. We all have this sort of lackingness in different ways, and we have to figure out how to deal with that and process it. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.